But all right, everyone. Hello. I want to welcome you to Founders Live Conversations. This is where we talk about new strategies and ideas around how to build and grow your startup. And we bring in a number of different experts. Today, we have an awesome partner that we have WillDom, and we have Stephen Evans that is representing WillDom.com. And we are excited to actually really touch upon the topic of getting unstuck, accelerating your growth in 2024. Stephen Evans, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, guys. How are you all? Good to see you all.
It's awesome. Yeah,
Um,
nice to have you. And Stephen, first of all, and we'll be dropping some things in the chat as well for everyone here, but feel free to just first and foremost, give a little background on yourself, and then maybe a little bit on WillDom, as we will also drop information and links in the chat for that. But, just feel free to introduce yourself here.
yeah, so I'm Steven. I've been in the tech space for about 20 years, and for about the past 14, I've worked with entrepreneurs specifically to implement solutions, help them implement some solutions, effectively grow solutions. In other words, helping them to develop effectively mostly technical systems to be able to help them grow and scale in a myriad of different industries, from finance to logistics to even oil and gas. So I right now am the managing director for WillDom. Our Dallas operation is the one I manage, and effectively we effectively provide developers for and development teams for new software projects. We do MVP builds, and we also do growth and marketing consulting. So that's pretty much kind of the backstory on me and us.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. And hey, we're excited to just really have a really a great conversation. And of course, we're gonna take some questions from anyone that's in this room that hey, maybe you are stuck, maybe you have a question on building a product, maybe you have things of that nature. So feel free to do that. We have an opening question for you all. So everyone, if you can, check out the chat box. And it would be really helpful here, and I'm not going to drop that in here again, actually. It would be helpful if everyone can actually just let us know what stage you are in your journey. Use one or two words. Are you not launched yet, or are you bootstrapped? Are you, hey, are you in a Series A? You've already raised a big group of funding. Just it would be helpful actually for Stephen to see this as well. But we would also just be curious, what stage are you in? Feel free to drop it in there. And we would appreciate if you did, just simply so we know the room and we know what stage you're in, so we can tailor the conversation and the content here to your appropriate stage. So we do have a bootstrapped. We have 6 months in. Anyone else here not launched yet? Salama, you sent that to me, so I think we'll make sure it's to the group. But we have a not launched yet. But you're 6 months in, 2 weeks from launching first version of the MVP, getting ready to launch first beta site. Awesome. That is great. So, again, feel free. Hey, we got pre-seed there. So everyone is kind of, starting to jump in here. This is awesome. Stephen, so what I would like to do, hey, we're bootstrapping and pre-launch. So, Stephen, we have a lot of questions internally. I know we already have some questions starting to flow here. But would you take the mic and, I'm going to give it to you here, give you the floor. You can cover some awesome 3 barriers keeping your startup stuck. What do people focus on for 2024? And then we'll get to some questions here a little later in the hour.
Good. Yeah. So first of all, I'm excited. This is a great room to be in. And I'm obviously in the midst of a lot of action takers, which is like that is the journey. Like starting the action, that is the journey. So like kudos for all of y'all who are bootstrapping, almost launched, already launched. Like that's the journey. So effectively what we're talking about today is like when we're in progress, when we're in motion and we do get stuck, because it happens. So effectively the goal for this little talk is effectively to help you to condense the areas in which we get stuck into what I would say is effectively to categorize them into what we would probably call containers. Because of the fact that pretty much once we get to the point of being able to, and this is something I've learned from running into effectively troubleshooting multiple issues, whether it's technical issues, whether it's business issues. Um, this is kind of what everything seems to boil down to is when you can categorize and label like what exactly the issue is, where the issue is. Uh, that's that's about half the battle. So that's really part of the goal for this, and then to kind of give you some pointers, direction, um, some kind of general direction of like where to go next. So effectively, the three different points that we're talking about here. Number one is resources. Like that's the big one. That's the one that probably comes top of mind for most people when we talk about being stuck. Obviously, time, money, people are busy. As far as and especially being a startup, as far as the amount of like talent and resources that we have available to us in terms of people resources, that's generally like the biggest thing. In other words, when you have some sort of a deadline or expectation in terms of when you're ready to launch, when you're trying to implement a new solution, um, the people that you have available in your personal time that you have available to be able to implement is a big deal. So effectively, when we, I guess, when we miss the barriers, in other words, we misunderstand the barriers that exist there, then it's harder to, I guess, move forward until like we kind of know um, and until we know effectively kind of where to go. So um, the resources thing, the one of the things I've learned about as far as resources are concerned is one of um, I guess probably one of the best things to realize is in my mind, resources are never really the issue. Um, there's an ancient proverb that says effectively like there's a time and a way for everything, even if a person's in trouble. And so effectively it's kind of like how do we what do we have? Like the first question is like what do I have? And us as humans, we have this tendency to always to frequently forget like what we do have available. Our brains somehow seem to focus on like what's not there, and forget like, oh, I have this over here. And most times the solution is, okay, I have this over here, this thing over here, this thing I forgot back here. We put them all together and hey, we got something. And like I said, like that's the startup journey for those of us who are bootstrapped. Um, in other words, being able to have um, that ingenuity, that outside the box thinking, and then I'm not bringing that in for like, I mean, this is really outside the box thinking of pulling multiple things together. In other words, you're developing a solution that no one else has developed, or at least not that you know of. So that's effectively kind of I guess the next step as far as resources is concerned. What's in my hand? Like what do I have right now? So being able to do that usually leads to like the solution. Um, and again, it's usually things that you've completely forgotten about, things that you haven't thought about, things that you may not have considered like worth much. Um, but that's usually where the answers comes from. And this part I'm being fairly general about because I want to focus more so on the next part. But definitely, if you have any questions, definitely you can put those in the chat, and we'll get to those in a bit.
Well, Stephen, just to stay on the topic, Dale has asked, any creative ideas about where, the resources come from. I can share something in a second, Dale, but maybe on that, when you are mentioning, and look, I agree with you in the sense of like, look, as a bootstrap startup founder and a team, you're early in the process. Sometimes you feel like, I lack all of this. Well, here's the thing, everyone. You do have things around you. You have resources around you if you look around. So with, Stephen, what sort of ideas would you have to, kind of look around, or like where do those come from? Just even from that like early stage, hey, we have limited resources, but there are resources around us.
Yeah. So especially for like in Dell's case. So number one, like you're bootstrapping strapping already. So more than likely, I'll answer your question here in a bit, but more than likely, the answer is usually keep doing what you're doing. Uh, um, so effectively, I'll put it like this. I was gonna tell this anyway. When I started an app about, and this is a project of mine in 2017. Like I didn't have any like huge. Didn't have a lot of funds. Didn't have a lot of backing. Like I'm personally a web developer or a application developer. So like I have time. I have the talent that I have. Um, but as far as like additional services, things that people to help, like I didn't have any of that. So effectively, what I wound up doing was I got a template that I found on Themes Forest, uh, paid $17 for it, and that was the start of this application. Fast forward, that thing's launched. It's actually doing business, running profitably, uh, but like it only started because like I just took the next step. So part of it, like as far as resources is concerned, is like you don't always have to see like 10 yards or 50 yards or 100 yards down. Sometimes it's like, what's that next step? Um, and then once we take the next step, it gives us clarity. As far as resources are concerned, like it depends on which type you're talking about. Expertise is one of the bigger ones. Um, that I seem to find startups running into a bunch. Resources is one thing, like I said, but most of the time the resource issue is no, I mean financially, time, that kind of thing. Most of the time, those are things that can be gotten around. At least the time and money aspect. In other words, to me, those are interchangeable. As in, like, if you don't have a lot of time, if you don't have a lot of money, then you can invest time. If you don't have a lot of time, you can invest money. Um, so those are there's kind of some quick little things. If you do have something specific, I can probably touch that a little more too.
Yeah, I would just add, hey Dale, that's kind of where you are now. This is why we created Founders Live, is to organize, circle, and bring forth, other types of resources. And, so whether it is Founders Live or your community, if you look around, there's opportunities, there's things, there's people that really can help with that. And from a bootstrap standpoint, that's the first thing you want to do is, really look around, not only physically in your city, but, hey, if you're a part of something like Founders Live, trust me, there are more resources underneath than you might know. So that's awesome. Let's go with number two there, Stephen.
So number two effectively is direction, and this is probably one of the bigger ones. Um, we generally get stuck in terms of, and this is pretty much at any phase of startup, um, in not knowing like where we're going. In other words, not having a clear picture of where we're headed. And like I said, this can happen in any stage of the startup. Like you can be like, in other words, you can make it to 100 million and get here. In other words, because you may have had a plan to get to the 100 million, but you don't have one past that. Um, so effectively, having a having a sense of like where am I going, what is it that I want, is one of the most important things that like we need in terms of keeping momentum going, keeping movement going, and effectively keeping your progress going. So one of the things that I think is probably the most helpful um, in this is number one, like kind of having periodic kind of planning sessions. I usually have like effectively um, once a month. Once a month is kind of like a resync, if you will, with these are the goals, these are the things that we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to accomplish long term. Having that kind of helps keep you engaged with, okay, this is where um, this is kind of the direction that we're going in. Another thing that helps me is like every 3 months, I kind of take a kind of little retreat, just kind of a personal deal, like 1 or 2 days, usually about 2 days, just to kind of like shut everything else out. It's the time that I use just kind of to think, plan, really, and it's not like a super it's not a super cerebral time. It's more like dump and then kind of reload. So I had this mentor who gave this who said one of the things he did was every once in a while, probably like every year, he would effectively fire all his employees in his mind and then rehire all the ones that he wanted to. Um, so like the strategy kind of works the same for this, which I imagine that's probably that's probably a good strategy for some people who probably need to get rid of some people. But the strategy holds true for this too, in the sense that during these kind of retreat times, these are good times to kind of dump and forget about like what you're doing already, resync with where you want to go, and then kind of from there almost build like as if it were from brand new how you get to there. um that kind of helps you get more, stay engaged, get more in tune with where you want to go, and even sometimes refresh your understanding of where you actually want to go. In other words, because sometimes it changes, not necessarily like huge shifts, but little tweaks, as in like, okay, this is how things have been going, or this is what we've learned so far. And so based on that, now I really want to take us in a different direction. So I think that's one of the biggest little tweaks that I've used in terms of kind of keeping on track, keeping the direction, and not getting stuck in that regard.
Awesome. And for everyone here, if you have a quick question on kind of that lack of clarity or direction, feel free to drop that in now. What I'm going to do, actually, Stephen, you kind of spurred this thought for me that I'm going to add to the conversation here. That's really it's aligned with what you said, which is like basically this is what you just said is what I do. I was taught this by a coach of mine as well years ago. And so if you kind of look in the chat there, I really having this like period, you break you have a long view. So I said 3 to 5 year vision. You can take that out. I take it out to 20 years. Like, okay, where are we really going? What are we doing? But having that 3 year actual kind of point, the vision of the business in 3 years. And then you break that into, okay, year one. So I literally do this at the end of every year. We look at what we did, but we plan the next year. So you have your 1 year priorities, and then you break those down into quarterly and monthly goals and checkpoints. And as Stephen just said, making sure you take time, and this is, I think, the kind of wizard thing is you literally like take time, evaluate, and kind of restart. And if you restart literally like every quarter based on what you mapped out for that year's initiatives and goals and milestones, it allows you to recenter and realize, oh, okay, if we didn't hit our goals, adjust and put forth the next ones for the next 90 days. And, trust me, and just as Steven said, it that will get you unstuck very quickly because now you know the next things to do. Like now you review, revise, and kind of re-aim and refire. And so, just I think that that's great. From being able, I like how you said that, Stephen, of just like really reestablishing literally the direction and clarity. And the last thing I'll say on this is I think it's important, everyone, like, each day or each quarter, you can kind of scratch and reestablish and start again. Like that gets you unstuck, right, Stephen? Start again,
Yes,
or at least
exactly.
like, okay, this is 0. Where do we get to, 5 or 10 again, right?
Yes, you're reminding me of the Live Die Repeat uh movie for those of you all who've seen it. This is kind of the same concept. It's like it really speaks to, I guess, how seasons and how life works. It is that constant, like the more we kind of set aside, like, I don't know, in some sense, since the more we set aside the past, the more we're able to be, I guess, have the what we're doing in the future, what we're actually headed for in the future in view, and clearly in view. So
Awesome. Awesome. All right. And everyone, again, feel free to drop questions in if you have them. But let's go to number 3 there, Stephen.
yeah. So the third one is effectively expertise. Um, One of the ways we get stuck is from having from not having expertise in whatever arena. So um, the thing that, and again, like this is, we're talking from the context of we're working with startups. So the thing with being a startup is effectively like when you start off, like you're wearing all the hats. It's at some point. So being able to have the expertise that you need for this area, that area, um, is effectively uh, almost impossible in some situations. Um, in other words, um, to be able to have, like, at the drop of a hat, the answers you need is effectively is very difficult, because in other words, these are things that you don't know. In other words, you haven't been through. Most people who start with startups, most of us when we start with startups, we have expertise in this bucket, this silo, this bucket, and are mostly unaware of a lot of times, like the different other aspects of, like, what is it going to take to actually get this thing launched, to actually get it scaled, to actually get it grown. And so effectively, the thing we jump into is learning mode, like quick, quick, quick. The problem with being in learning mode and just in learning mode is effectively it's different from operating with a team of people who are already experts in the different areas, the different buckets that are necessary for the startup to perform. So while you can succeed in, I guess, in being in that position where you don't have the experts available already, it's just harder. So in other words, having to rely on, kind of going to YouTube, or um, going and scouring the internet for blah blah blah, um, effectively it just slows you down. So things that you probably could have accomplished in a whole lot less time had you had the right people to call, the right people to talk to. Um, it takes a whole lot longer. It just steals time away from you being able to grow and scale your business. So um, the expertise effectively, as Nick mentioned, Founders Live is effectively a really good like community for having for getting questions answered. Again, as Nick also mentioned, like there are a bunch of community resources where you can set up office hours with experts in different areas and different fields. So those are ways to kind of, I guess, hack a little bit. Obviously, like I said, you can find things on the internet. The thing with that is, um, I know it sounds crazy, but even in 2024, not everything is going to be searchable on the internet. On the internet, um, it sounds really crazy, but at the same time, there's sometimes you need general information, which you can readily find that. But a lot of times we need like specific information. Um, so if information that has multiple levels of specificity, that it would be extremely difficult to put it in a search engine. And even if you could, you probably wouldn't come up with the right result. So that's effectively where we more so need people to call on. So I've personally worked with different organizations. So in other words, if you want to reach out to find out more, you're definitely welcome to do that. Again, within Founders Live, there's a myriad of resources to tap into. So that's really I guess the biggest thing is as far as being stuck, in other words, and unstuck in terms of expertise, is this issue of um, um, knowing effectively where to go to get questions answered, um, and effectively doing that, knowing how to do it and where to go and how to do it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good one. Really filling the gaps of, because hey, we're early stage companies. We might be a team of 3 people, 5 people. You clearly don't have all the things, covered. So it's about finding that expertise, right? And that help. And of course, as Steven said, we have it through Founders Live for sure. If and we've broken it down actually. Like this is like a really maybe an exciting time to just describe, like, as we build out our ecosystem, we've actually really started to categorize industry focus. So WillDom, maybe that's a good point. It's a good place to just touch upon this a little bit. Stephen, so if they're looking for product software development expertise, WillDom is one of our partners that you can find within our system. How do early stage companies, kind of find the expertise through WillDom and maybe work with them? Just kind of curious on that.
Yeah. So as far as we work with startups of different kind of different sizes, different stages. So uh, for um, for kind of pre-seed or actually startups who are already funded. Effectively, you have a budget. You know what you want to do. We effectively want to we build out the team that for you to be able to use to implement the solution that you have or that you want to implement. Um, on the lower end, more pre-seed. In other words, um, effectively we operate we I'm sorry provide training for effectively getting you past some of the things that get you stuck technically. uh I saw a lot of people on here saying that they bootstrap, and I know you're probably more than aware of some of the issues, especially if you're running a tech startup, some of the issues you can run into in terms of implementing a new software, excuse me, technical solution. So we provide training effectively, specifically to help answer questions that are specific to your startup to then get you past the stuck issues as far as technical development is concerned. And then in addition, we also provide kind of consulting on how to grow and scale. So we have a marketing team that helps to provide marketing strategy, marketing resources for startups who are trying to get out to market. If you're trying to grow your audience, if you're trying to expand subscribers, that's one of the things that we help with as well.
All right. So we dropped a link in there for you all to learn more, getting unstuck. And Stephen, maybe talk a little bit about essentially the course or what you're opening up starting at the end of this month, just so people are a little more aware, but that link talks a lot about it.
So this is one of our trainings. It's a free training to help with startups who are they're pre-launch. So effectively, it's to help those who haven't launched effectively. And pre-launch in this case includes like you're developing, you've already finished developing, and you're still not where you want to be. You're still not where you want to be as far as the number of subscribers, as far as attribution is concerned. So the training is specifically designed to help you again get past the things that are getting you stuck, and to get you onto where you want to go. So effectively, training is 2 days, starts on the 28th, and it'll be 7 p.m. They're both evening sessions. So come out and like it'll be interactive. Like we'll have time for question and answers. The whole purpose of it is to help get you unstuck. So we're there to help do that.
Right. And that was set, when you say 7 p.m., is that Central Time for you?
Central Time, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, hey, depending on where you are in the world, because we do have people on different continents here, you just be mindful of that, of when the time is. But, let's get to a few questions here. So, so Omar has a question, and it's kind of an interesting one around, so for them being stuck really seems to be around, they're looking to open their services and products and run the business abroad. So just to be mindful here, they're located in Egypt, and you're probably in Cairo or somewhere close. We are really, really strong in Cairo. So shout out to all of you there in Egypt. This is awesome. But they're facing challenges in the business and really getting more unexpected, and things kind of hindering their milestones and planning. Some of that might be geopolitical, some of that might be just things that are happening in the country. How would you suggest, especially early stage startups, that it's a tough point, it's very very important to take the next steps to get momentum when you have these external forces that are hindering your growth, that might be out of their control. So that's probably the big thing here. So what would you suggest there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one of the things I've realized is anytime you're starting something, um, anytime you're starting something, like the opposition doesn't just come from like what's in front of you. Um, I don't know. I don't know that there's a rule or like a law regarding that, but it almost without fail is like, or I guess it's the anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But effectively, this seems to be something specific to, especially specific to like when you're trying to start something. Um, I'll put it like this. So, um, a lot of times when, at least a lot of the startups that I've helped before, a lot of the stories I watched, I listened to this podcast called Business Wars, which is kind of neat. But effectively, it gives stories effectively about how businesses operate, how they rise, how they fall. But one of the things that's kind of a theme throughout that is when these companies, in other words, we see on the other side of these companies' success, when they've made it, when they've hit the big time, but we don't see like what the journey was for them to get there. Um, but the theme that I've seen through all of these is usually when there's something big on the other side, like there's a lot of pushback, there's a lot of obstacles to overcome in order to get to that. Um, and that might seem a little I don't know. It might seem, I guess, like I'm making light of this, but at the same time, it seems to be true. In most of the cases that I've seen, it seems to be true that that's just kind of how it happens. Now, as far as like dealing with those situations, um, one thing I found personally is the only strategy when you're facing that type of opposition is simply just to keep going. Um, it's not like don't try to hit home runs. Don't try to be a superhero. Just keep moving. In other words, the way that we get from an idea to actually getting it implemented is consistency more than being the superhero. So effectively, if you have to adjust schedule, if you have to adjust production, if you have to adjust to scale things, to pull things back for a small time until the external circumstances get easier or better, then that may just be what you have to do in order to keep the thing moving forward. But effectively, the goal is and the priority is just keep things moving forward. And you can do it at a crawl, you can do it at a walk, you can do it at a sprint. But like if the external circumstances are pretty tough, then hey, a crawl is just fine as long as
Yeah.
you're still moving.
Yeah. So Omar, actually great question. And, especially living in the United States, we can't fully understand what might be happening right now. So that's one thing. So just understand that. But I'll add a little bit of just context to, as Stephen says, like just keep going and look, Founders Live for, that when the pandemic hit, as everyone was like, what is going on? A lot of business was disrupted, but I think the ones that are now here still and growing and successful, and Founders Live is one of them. We figured it out of how to keep going. It really disrupted what we were doing, and we had to rewrite some of our things, and we had to literally just keep going. And the final thing I would say on this is, you know, uh, in some ways, what Stephen was saying was all the things that you can't control, well, you can control them. You cannot control them. So it's less, do not worry about those things as much as you can not worry about them. Just there's a lot of stuff out there you can't control. You want to focus on what you can control. And, we as founders have certain things that we can influence, you can control. And kind of what Stephen just said is, hey, maybe you dial it back down to a crawl, but you're every month still gaining that ground and momentum. it maybe not be the sprint that you were looking for in in the previous planning period, but just focus on what you can control and minimize all that external frustration and challenge. And I know it's easier said than done, but
Yeah.
that's literally what leads to success, right? So good stuff. All right. Well, we have another question. So Noel here is asking, so Stephen, you mentioned around actually digital marketing, kind of going to market and helping early stage startups with that. How important is it to really dive into and do digital marketing in the early stages? I'm not sure how early we're talking about here, but could you speak a little more on maybe some reasons why or strategies of how important it is to provide that marketing? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Effectively, so part of the training that we do is effectively to help around that the whole process from scoping to building to marketing. One of the things that a lot of startups miss is marketing starts in the scoping part. In other words, you'll spend a huge chunk of time, money, resources to build out some type of whatever the product you're selling is, whether it's a piece of software, whether it's a clothing line, whether it's like whatever it is, you're going to spend the time to the resources to build it out. What you don't want to happen is to spend all the time and money and resources building it out, get to the end, start marketing, and realize no one wants this. Um, or the people I thought that wanted this don't want this. So that this is why I say marketing starts at the beginning. Because effectively before you even start building, the what you want to do is figure out like who is the target audience for this, like who wants this, have some backing, some level of proof that okay, this product is something that will be desirable, something that there is a market for people who desire this. And sometimes like it's easy to get stuck on um it's easy to get stuck on like my ideas and like, oh, I think it's gonna be so great. It's like I saw this thing over here and I think that because of this, that these people will want this. But I'll put it in here just to say it's really advantageous to entrepreneurs to make sure to get like some level of market feedback from the market, feedback from outside of us before we go and say, oh, before we build this thing out and then try to push it. And this is not just when you're doing MVP, this is when you're doing iterations. One of the things that I in other words, remember from Microsoft is Microsoft ran into this several times. So effectively, Windows Vista, which you don't hear about much today, Windows ME, and both of those projects and in a couple others, they went in some back room and said, "Oh, let's code this thing. These people are going to like this." And like in every single instance, they flopped. So effectively, knowing knowing who you're going for to me is probably the most important part of marketing. But as far as actually putting things out, yes, kind of getting some traction towards the end of your MVP build, I think is a good idea and start to in terms of putting fillers out there. But like I said, the most important thing is having a really, really clear understanding of who's going to pay for this before you even start building.
Yeah, that last point is, no, that's why you want to exercise some marketing aspects as early as possible, so you can start to learn more about that market, and in the end get to what Steven's mentioning around. In the end, you need to find that target market. So but there's obviously more nuance to that, and there's probably a longer discussion that hey, if you want to chat with anyone, whether it's Steven or anyone at WillDom, there's information there in the chat box to further that question. But I think the short answer is you want to start as soon as possible so you can start learning more about not only your market but your target customers and actually what you're building. So that's great. We have a question from Lamarco here, and I want to make sure that we get to it before the end of the hour. So we're now talking about burn rate and essentially how much cost on a monthly basis that a startup would implement. And what are the best ways to do to getting, to having working capital as a startup starts to hire a team, especially before that launch date, maybe assuming they want to build a product or whatnot. So I guess the question is, let's go with, do you have any insight that you have seen or that what you would share with startup founders around being mindful of how they are minimizing costs but maximizing how they're preparing for that initial launch and go to market with that product?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll go back to the thing of direction. Um, Effectively knowing where you're going, knowing what you're doing. Part of that is effectively, especially for like the MVP process, having a scope. So having as I'm gonna say having as detailed as possible of a scope of like what is it that we're going to build. Um, um, what is it that absolutely needs to be built in this phase? Like anything else, being vigilant about not like bringing anything else in it during that time, which like it's easy to set up a plan ahead of time and then get into the process and think, oh well, we can probably do this and add this. Things are going great, but it's not a good idea, especially if you're talking software, because the thing about software is most people don't realize like there's not really anybody who can accurately predict like how long a software project is going to take. Um, like the best of the best, the biggest of the biggest. Um, no one can like accurately predict how long it's going to take. So simply because if you think about it, it's every time someone building something brand new, and most times building something that someone else hasn't built before. Um, so effectively, it's custom every time. It's not like I would say it's not like building a house. It's a little like building a house, but not so much because effectively in a house you have components, like you have a bathroom, you have sinks. So the person who does sinks, they're always just going to do sinks. Like plumbing is the wires may go a little bit different way, um, but effectively there's a model for how houses are built. When you're talking software, you're talking to a developer who's done things from um, accounting systems to software that interacts with some level of IoT device, some level of um, I guess hardware product or something. So with that level of I guess diversity in terms of like what could be built, it's almost impossible to predict how long it's going to take. So the best way to deal with that is once you get a scope, like you keep it. You keep it
Do it.
as much as possible. If you're hiring a developer to do it, um, usually the developers won't have too much trouble with this. But just as so, in other words, as far as the being the client, It's, in other words, it helps a bunch if you make sure that you're not introducing more things into the process at that point. Not that you can't do it, but prioritize the things that you've already said you want to do. And then if after that stuff is done, you want to do some other things, then you can go on ahead and stack those on top. But just because you don't know which which components will balloon and which ones won't, that's why you do an MVP, as in you scale it down, and kind of plan for, give yourself a little bit of margin in terms of how much time that you're expecting it to take. It's kind of a just in case thing. Do that, and that usually keeps you safe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really great. Just scope and sticking to it. That's kind of in the end, maybe the last thing I would add here is, you just break things down into pieces and, of course, having a big vision, that's awesome. That's what we want,
Yeah.
uh, startup. But if you're gonna, especially like as in launch, what is again, that's the whole point of minimum viable product. What is the minimum usable, effective product that you need to roll out and have to get momentum, and then over time you can add those other things, and that comes at a cost and expense, of course, and humans and a team, and just it's an incremental process, and very much it's important to be aware of those costs as you come out of the gate, and then you build them up as you can. So with that, everyone, hey, we are pretty much at the end of this hour. Stephen, thank you so much. It's great. Thank you for, bringing this topic to the surface, which is really like, hey, there's a lot more than probably says that, hey, we're kind of in this place, we're kind of stuck. There's some things, these 3 points were there to really bring light to, from resources to really direction and clarity. And then the last one is really expertise and people around you. And those are the things that will help to get you all unstuck. So we have dropped. Is there anything else you want to drop in the chat for, we've dropped in the link, unstuckyourstartup.com. You'll see that information there. The training starts on February 28th. Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. So if you guys are interested in that, y'all are interested, if you're listening later, watching later, hey, hit that link, and maybe there's some stuff there available to you later. But we want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation. And, again, thank you, Stephen Evans, and thank you, WillDom, for being a partner of ours and really powering that expertise on the back end of everything that we have.
Definitely. Thanks, Nick.
All right. Well, thank you all. That's it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and we will have another Founders Live conversations coming up here in the next couple weeks. So keep an eye on that. All right. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the day.